How's it going, everyone? So in this video, I just want to talk a bit about the nature of emotions and how momentum and emotions are intimately connected, as well as how emotions are an addiction. And if we can be more self-aware of this fact of psychology, then we can learn to harness our emotions and channel them in a way that's a lot more productive, beneficial, and conducive to living a productive life, like the life that we want to live, right? This can help us approach our life in a way that provides us a lot more of what we want. And this can really solve the majority of our emotional issues. Understanding how emotions, like the state of emotion, the state of feeling that we're in, is an addiction that we constantly choose to feed. And so there's a lot of other concepts that are very beneficial that can help with conquering emotions and basically being happy all the time, like myself. Like I would say, probably 7 to 8 days out of 10, I'm like absolutely, filled with appreciation, joy, optimism, and positivity, just because I've actually read the right information. Because most people, they read information and they follow experts, the advice of experts, that actually holds them back and prevents them from actually feeling happy all the time. And then they just assume happiness is not possible, or, you're not able to be happy all the time. And the fact is, like, for you, maybe not until you've actually read the right information, like I have. Anyway, it's a choice. Happiness is a choice. So, but you won't want to believe that if you're sad all the time. So anyway, because of the momentum and the addiction to the state that you're in at a baseline. So let's talk about it, all right? So yeah, momentum. What does momentum look like, first of all? So momentum, let's say the hill analogy, right? Let's say we have a giant hill, okay? And you start at the top of the hill, all right? Let's say a mountain. You start at the top of the mountain. And it's a giant mountain, and it's just a straight slope on an incline that goes downward, okay? And when you first get started on the mountain, you're going a little slow, and you're just getting started down the mountain at the very top. But the farther you go down the mountain, the more velocity and speed you develop until you go faster and faster and faster and faster. And the closer you get to the bottom of the mountain, the faster and faster you go, the more speed you build, okay? Emotions are just like that. The more thoughts and feelings and circumstances that we focus on that are reinforcing sadness or anger or happiness or whatever emotion they reinforce, the more and more of those emotions or thoughts or circumstances start to grow in our mind, in our heart, and in our experience. Now, this is a very hard thing for people to accept if they are already living a negative life, because the number one problem that humans face in our reality is that no one wants to fucking take responsibility for their own life, take responsibility for their own emotions or their own problems. Every single buddy. And this is being trying to be normalized by our culture and our society and our medical system. Okay, they try to teach you that, oh no, little Jimmy, if you're sad, it's not your fault. It's your childhood trauma. It's your parents' fault. It is society's fault. It is the government's fault. It's the system's fault. It's bias. It's this. It's that. It's your genetic mental disorder. That's what they told me when I was a child. When I was in and out of mental hospitals until the age of like 12 or 13, they were telling me that I had severe bipolar disorder and all this other stuff. And, and a lot of it, in my opinion, was influenced by some individuals in my childhood who were emotionally and verbally abusive for sure. But everyone around me was telling me that my emotional problems were caused by genetics. And for me, because I have always been a natural anarchist and I always go against the grain, I was like rebellious. I was like, no, I refuse to accept this idea that I have some kind of biological hereditary predisposition to bipolar disorder or mood swings. Because I also knew that, when I had a so-called mood swing of anger or sadness, it was directly triggered by some things that some adult influences in my life were triggering because of their abuse. And then when I was in school, I would lash out in what they thought was manic episodes because, there's all this energy and children around me, and it's a more exciting environment. And school's so freaking boring. You expect someone like me who has a lot of mental energy. I also was extremely intelligent as a child, 149 IQ in the second grade. Okay, 99th percentile of intelligence. Of course, I'm not going to be similar to everyone else. I had way too much mental energy and too much what people like to call trauma, right? Childhood trauma. That was triggering emotions in me, and I couldn't let it out at home because my parents told me, don't cry and all this other crap, right? Well, anyway, would let it out like in school, and then it would look like some kind of mental disorder. Now, everyone else, I think the majority of people who think they have mental issues and it's genetics and it's this and that, they're told that it's a mental disorder, or they're told that it's all these other things outside of themselves, and therefore it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where they are constantly reinforcing that. And they're like, okay, it's okay if I don't put effort into changing myself because there's no use in trying to change my emotions. It's a genetic disease. I need medication for the rest of my life. I need to go to, doctors told me that I'd never be able to live a normal life and all this other crap. I'd always be in a mental hospital. And I was only like 9 at the time, right? I was only like 9 to 11 years old when he said that. Anyway, I refused to accept that. I told myself, if I want to live a normal life, if I want to live a good life, I'm going to find a way to fucking do it. And guess what? I proved them wrong because I chose to take action. Because I chose to, through trial and error, find through cause and effect, like, shit, if I act this way, people are going to treat me this way, and I'm going to get these consequences. And eventually I was like, oh shit, if I just don't blow up out of anger, even though I had a lot of anger bottled up inside of me for over a decade, those emotions were there. But when I chose not to freely express the anger, freely express the crying, and like with people who would judge me like that, whatever. All I'm trying to say is, like, I chose to discipline those parts of myself, and eventually over time, I was able to turn the ship, and I was able to change the momentum and transmute that anger into understanding, transmute that anger into empathy, to know that the people that I thought traumatized me, they were actually suffering from childhood trauma themselves, and to not take it personally or place the blame on them. Anyway, so my point there is that I was told through childhood that I had some kind of external circumstances, like that I was doomed for life, and I was never going to be able to change my emotional state, that I was just doomed to always have these mood swings or whatever, right? Anyway, what really changed it, obviously, was nutrition and lifestyle practices for sure. But the biggest thing is learning that when you are angry and you start to focus on things that anger you, okay? Like, let's say that you get in a fight with your best friend, and they always, like, they criticize you about things that you don't like or some shit, right? Well, first of all, I actually just removed people from my life that would, give me negative, just like spew negative vibes, provided they weren't rational. Because there's a difference between someone giving you honest advice, like, hey, your fucking videos have no fucking value. I'm sorry, but you just blabber on about shit that literally doesn't help anyone. It's like, that sounds really rough. But for me, if they can give me some reasons as to why they feel that way, like, well, you just kept blabbing on about, you know, your hair or some shit like that, right? Whatever. Like, give me logical reasons to support their point. It may be harsh, but at least they're honest, because literally no one else is honest. Anyway, let's say you have a fight with your fucking best friend, and you're like, I hate you, and or whatever, like, right? And you think about whatever criticism they tell you, and it just always makes you feel angry, okay? That anger, every time you think about it, is going to trigger those emotions, like those thoughts about your friend, thinking about the fights that you had. And as long as you're thinking about it, especially in a way that triggers angry emotions, it's going to trigger anger inside of you. And if you've ever noticed when you have a fight with your friend, or you have a fight with your parents, or you have a fight with your significant other or something like that, right? And in the moment you're feeling really angry, and you try to solve the problem within those feelings of anger, what happens usually? Usually, all that happens is it blows up in your face. And you may have good intentions. You're like, okay, I'm angry right now, but we're going to solve this argument, right? We're going to get to the bottom of this, and we're going to talk this out, right? And usually, like, so unless you're really, really mature, and you're both operating on a similar level of maturity, or so you think, right? Because everyone thinks they're more mature or more intelligent than they really are. Usually, with most people, it just blows up in your face, no matter how good your intentions are, right? And it's so, like, it seems impossible to actually iron things out when you're angry. Well, what happened? Well, if you ever go to, like, a psychologist or a counselor, right, especially a relationship counselor, the most common advice they'll give you would be like, all right, well, next time y'all have this argument and you feel angry together like that, both y'all should take a walk for like 30 minutes alone, right? Take some time to breathe, and maybe just don't even think about the situation, or maybe think about the situation, right? And so removing yourself from the angry situation, going for a walk and breathing, a lot of times allows the anger to kind of like go down, right? And you can, you may not feel amazing about the situation, but usually, like, a lot of times, you just completely have a different perspective after that you go on that walk. Usually, it completely shifts the momentum. But at the very least, you'll feel a little bit better, a little bit more easy about the situation, and you'll be more calm. And then when you come back after the 30 minutes, usually, unless you're extremely messed up in your emotions and head, right? Unless you really have a lot of thoughts to iron out and emotions to work through, so to speak, usually you're able to a lot more productively come together and talk things out and solve the issue, okay? Now, another thing that you'll notice is a lot of times when you have problems with other people, or you have fights with other people, the thing that you're fighting about is so small, but in the moment it feels so big. Like, I can't even begin to tell y'all how many fights I've had with people that I really loved, like my significant other in the past, or a really good friend of mine, like that I've known for a decade, family members of all kinds, and we just blow up at each other, right? Over something stupid, something really, really dumb. And it's like after a while, when you allow yourself to chill the fuck out and maybe focus on something else, and you come back and you talk and you come back and talk about it again, you realize how stupid it was to even, like, there's nothing to even talk about. Like, why was I upset over that, right? And so the point that I'm trying to make is, like, in the moment, when you're feeling angry or you're feeling sad or whatever, something really insignificant can seem like the end of the world, okay? But when you allow the momentum to die down, you realize, like you see clearly, and you can see it through the lens of the more calm emotion. So for me, these days, I almost always aim to, at the very least, if I can't be super happy all the time, right, to be neutral and to detach myself, like emotionally, from like situations that would normally cause a stress response. And you can't always do such a thing, but for me, um, the more reflection, like third person perspective I try to bring to something, the more I try to think about the rationality and whatnot of a situation or whatever it is. Anytime I feel triggered, if I can think about it rationally and philosophically for the pure fact that I am actually stimulated by such a thing, right? Like, for example, when I'm on the road and I'm like driving on the highway and there's a bunch of really angry drivers, it usually boggles my mind at how little intention people have. Like, they'll literally, we're on like a neighborhood road or something, and they'll like race me. Like, they'll try to race me. I'm going the speed limit, and they get angry. They'll tailgate me. They'll speed around and cut me off and almost kill me. And then like we end up at the same red light. And for me, I'm not so much angry or upset at their behavior per se. I'm annoyed at the fact that what would drive someone to put themselves in physical danger? They would put me in physical danger, put their car and their property at physical danger. They're risking a whole bunch of other people's lives on the side and getting a ticket from a police officer and all sorts of things. There's literally nothing but risk. And what benefit do they have? You know? Maybe on the highway, right, if they speed or whatever in the fast lane, they'll be able to get to their destination an hour earlier. But especially on like main roads or something like that, whatever, usually 9 times out of 10, the freaking pros do not outweigh the cons of this, you know? And so I'm just like baffled, mind boggled by the lack of intention. So anyway, for me, it can be, that's like the one thing for some reason that really gets me a lot. Probably because my dad was a really crazy, dangerous driver and used to road rage all the time. Maybe. But like for me, what helps is reflecting on it. Like just how I just did, thinking about how there little intention there was. But, thinking the other side is like, well, it's possible that person has, just has a really hard time regulating their emotions, and blah, blah, blah. And, or maybe they are diabetic and they're very low blood sugar, which could be causing them to feel really, impatient and angry. Or maybe they're rushing to the emergency room or whatever. Maybe they had a long day at work, or maybe they're late to work. You know what I mean? So when I start to look at things from different perspectives, it kind of neutralizes the negative momentum of the anger and whatnot, and put me in a more neutral place, in a more intelligent, contemplative, and a more productive place. Because what am I going to do is be angry at them, right? Ruin my day. So anyway, so that's an example of how you can kind of neutralize momentum. The negative momentum, right? Because when you start to reflect on it in an intelligent way, for one, the more emotional you are, the less the less rational thinking mind you use, because it literally turns off that part of the brain when you're using all of your emotion. And when you think intelligently and rationally about something, and you philosophize the experience in the moment, you are also turning off that emotional part of your brain. You're digging deeper and thinking intellectually, and generally what we see on in studies on the subject, that part of the brain is firing less. And that's not always the case, and it depends on the person. But yeah, I've found that that's actually true. And so, yeah, that's the best way to kind of neutralize momentum, in my opinion. But another thing you can do is just, if you practice meditation, like real meditation, I find the focusing on the breath and the sinking of the head energy down into the solar plexus. I could literally feel, for whatever reason, an energetic sensation from here, down here, and then down into my solar plexus. When you practice meditation, you can literally trigger that, what I call energetic transmutation. Take it for what it is, not a scientific thing. And breathe through and sink those negative emotions in the moment down in my solar plexus. And in the moment, that's a very positive attribute. So anyway, let's take this a step further. Let's talk a little bit more about the addictive aspect, okay? So what you'll find is, and this is something that where it really got me thinking is, all right, so let's say you have a YouTube channel, and let's say you always have like negative comments on a YouTube channel. Something you have to understand is, like, somebody who takes their time to leave you negative comments on YouTube, they're not only doing that to your YouTube channel. They're leaving negative comments on so many other people's YouTube channels. They're just a negative person. It's nothing personal. This is a thing that a lot of people don't understand. So, like, if you're the type of person that wonders why you care so much about what other people think, it's probably because you're not very aware of your own emotions and not very aware of the emotions and the tendencies and the psychology behind other people who choose to hate. People who choose to just, I'm talking negative, like unproductive, unconstructive, negative comments, okay? Because even if constructive criticism hurts, it's still beneficial. I love constructive criticism, even if I'm stubborn against it, which I tend to be. But it's the negative things that come from a place of jealousy and bitterness, right? Like, oh, you're such an idiot, blah, 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 Wolfgang, because don't you know meat will kill you, and yada, yada. I can't believe you're such an idiot for, it's like crap like that. It's like, you'll find that they leave comments like that on everyone's YouTube channel. And there's YouTube influencers out there. Let's just say, a man named after a Simpsons character, okay? The Cowabunga dude, okay? If you are in the carnivore community, you know who I'm talking about, who literally, when he debates people, he just obliterates them with personal attacks and how they're not worthy and their education skills are horrible and they're just... all these negative names, and literally his whole shtick is just talking crap to people and maybe talking a little bit of science about the Randall cycle and crap like that. If y'all have watched his videos, you know exactly what I'm talking about now, right? Anyway, all that this guy does, and he literally has a history of this and patterns of this, and he'll start off being friendly with someone and then progressively over the week start making hate videos towards him, even if they are more scientific and have a purpose. The point I'm trying to make is, like, negative people are addicted to negativity. And I've found this with myself, where if I start to argue with people on the internet, I literally can't stop myself, and it starts to become an addiction. And I'm like, anytime someone would say something bad to me, I just couldn't help but like obsess over it and think about it and reply to them. And like every single time they reply to me, I reply back, and I'd spend all this time, like I'm talking 30 minutes to an hour on one fucking comment response to someone I don't even know. And this is the thing I notice, and it's crazy to me. It's really not something I like to focus on for my mental health. When I'm on Instagram or something and I start to look at these comments, just mindless freaking attack, like arguing about stupid shit. And I'm thinking to myself, how can people, like, for me, the knowing that other human beings will spend their time on that. It's crazy. Like, I have no words to describe how I feel about that, what I think about that. Other than, like, people need really good like a psychologist or something. And I don't even know, man. But the point I'm trying to make is, like, so I thought about that. Yeah, I kind of picked my nose right there. What are you going to do about it, right? You're going to get emotional and, right? Oh, he picked his nose. Whatever. Anyway, yeah, fuck it. Um, so I'm thinking about, I'm like, well, what would drive someone to freaking like argue with strangers like that or whatever? Or what would drive someone to constantly like drive violently on the road and cut people off or whatever? And but when I think about when I start to do it and I notice it becomes addictive, and the more I start to do it a little bit, the more I want to do it in the future. It's an addiction is the answer, honestly. The same question applies to why do people eat junk food all the time? Why do people smoke cigarettes or drink alcohol? And people will say, oh, everything is good in moderation. And it's like, that's not a fact at all. No amount of time spent arguing with other people on the internet that you don't know is good. No amount of time freaking cutting other people off in traffic has any benefit at all. It shouldn't do it at all. Because one time is all it takes to kill someone or kill yourself. Anyway, I notice that it's an addiction. It really is. And so what is addictive about it? It's stimulating. Okay? When you're racing other cars on the road and your heart starts beating and you're like, oh shit, like, yes, I freaking I passed them, like, oh, this guy, like, why won't he move out of the way? And then it's an adrenaline rush that you don't get from your everyday life. Most people are bored in their life. This is the facts. They're bored in their life and they're craving some sort of stimulation. And that's why they're addicted to junk food and all these other negative things, because their regular life is boring, and so consumerism gives them stimulation. Buying a new car, buying a new this and that, it's stimulating in the moment, but none of it's really curing the underlying fact that they have no purpose, no drive in life, yada, yada. They're addicted to all these negative, toxic things rather than addictive to what are my values, aligning my life with my values, what are things I want to achieve, and being addictive to the motivational process of achieving your goals, which becomes addictive too, right? So the stimulation of arguing with people on the internet, right? The whole day people are just like, for one, they're building up negative emotions. If you work at a call center, for example, and you deal with like really freaking difficult people all day, you start to build up all these emotions inside of you, like, oh, these, people are just dumb and I hate people and whatever. And then like you're like, I wish that I could, take it out on them and whatever. And then you're out on the street, on the roads or whatever, and then you just take all your anger out on other drivers that are literally just trying to get from point A to point B safely, right? Just like you should be. But for you, for these aggressive drivers, for these really these people that are arguing in the comment section on the internet, these are ways of them trying to get their emotions out, to vent their frustration, their anger out that they allowed to build up during their workday, and it just becomes this like cycle of like negative addictive tendencies, emotional tendencies, and things. And the only way to break out of it is, for one, to be aware of what's happening. Be aware that when you're angry at these people on the road and you're driving just really like an asshole, or you're arguing with people on the internet, it's like deep down inside, somewhere inside you, that this makes no sense and is extremely just like, I would say childish, but I don't think children stoop down to that level. It's just mentally ill. Serves no benefit at all, and all it does is waste time and sets you up for pain and frustration and whatever else, and other people too. It's so anyway, you will become aware of that first, and then you have to start to consciously change the thoughts that you have, especially throughout the day. Change your emotional reactions somehow. You've got to start to shift the momentum somehow. You can't always just be like, I'm going to go from being angry all the time to suddenly being extremely happy all the time. That is generally not easy to do. If you can do it, then definitely go for it, right? A lot of people find that when they try to fake it till they make it, their normal everyday baseline starts to become what they previously were trying to fake, right? However, I personally think you have to just shift your focus to something you can authentically feel better thought or better emotions about. And really, what they call, cognitive reframing, which is a scientifically verified technique that is used in clinical psychology, and it works very well, where you're not like trying to fake thoughts or fake emotions, but you're changing the way that you see these situations, right? Like call centers, for example. Let's say that you work at a call center or whatever, and you deal with people who are always mean and negative to you, right? If you just allow, like, on autopilot, mentally lazy, like, yourself to just think like, oh, these people are all bad people and whatever, then, I mean, first, like, is that really true? Do you really think, like, people just they act mean to others because they are intentionally trying to be negative like that, right? Do you think they really want to be that way? Someone who is cognitively lazy would just be like, yeah, of course, like, people are just evil, like, blah blah blah. It's like, it doesn't make any sense at all. Most people, for whatever reason, they're doing these things because they're trying to relieve some emotions or some anger, or they're trying to have a good life, maybe directly or indirectly. Okay, and you just may not be able to see it as long as you're operating from the same anger that these people are spreading like a disease to you, right? But if you can think about it from a third-party perspective, a clinical psychologist would try to make you look at it like, well, is it possible that this person's just really angry about the situation and they are trying to get it solved, and maybe they just have a different perspective than you, and it's possible that maybe if y'all could, like, find a middle ground, you could solve the problem together, and then you would have no reason to be angry or whatever it might be, right? But changing the way that you see things, okay, can completely shift the negative momentum that you feel throughout the day. And like how I mentioned earlier, how I was talking about the angry drivers, right? If you can start to think about why, like, what would drive other people to, what would be causing other people to just be like cutting you off and like trying to race you and, flip you off and road rage at you when you're just driving the speed limit trying to get to your job, like, or whatever, trying to get home safely. Like, why in the world would someone do that? Whoa, and if you really think about it, you can probably come to the conclusion that, well, maybe that person just has some issues, right? They're stuck in a cycle of negativity, and it's nothing personal. Like, if you watch them, they're probably going to do that to the next person and the next person. Like, they'll tailgate you, cut you off and pass you, flip you off as if you did something wrong. And then a couple minutes later, you see they do the same thing to the next person in front of you, right? It's really not necessarily you. There's something inside of them that's causing them to do these things. The same thing goes for YouTube comments, right? And the thing is, it's a mistake to try to, like, talk to them about it or something, right? To try to reason with them, right? Because they're not a reasonable person. Someone in the comment section who's like freaking out at you and all this stuff, like, I see it all the time. You might recognize, oh, this person has a very stressful perspective on life, and they have some problems in their life. That was what else would drive them to spend all this time going crazy in the comment section to an anonymous stranger on the internet, right? Over some shit like what nutrition style you follow or what political camp you follow, right? Because you might convince yourself that it's a really significant thing, that if you discuss it, it'll help society somehow, but you're just fooling yourself so you can continue to reinforce the negative emotions that you want to participate in, because your life's probably boring, right? But whatever. I see people that might comment back like, wow, you must have a really bad life or negative life or boring life to want to talk all this hatred on YouTube comments or whatever, you should really go see a psychiatrist or whatever, right? Like, I think in the past I've said things like that to people that leave me crazy ass essays. Like, they write a whole essay in the comments about why I'm a bad person. But the problem is, like, all that's going to do is start to trigger your own addiction to keep responding and retaliating back to that person. And you're just participating in it, and it's only hurting you. So, anyway, the best thing you can do is find a place of neutrality, reflect on why that person might be doing it or whatever, and just let it go. Let it go. You can even delete the comment, whatever. For me, for a long time, I always felt like I needed to entertain these people because I know that I'm subject to bias, and maybe, even though they sound really irrational and stuff, maybe it's me who's being irrational. So I need to think about, what their perspective is, and so that I am not being biased and maybe allowing myself to open myself up to places where I might be wrong, right? But I've found over time that sometimes that's the case, but 9 times out of 10, these people on the other side are really just like, they're trying to like bring you down so that they can feel some kind of dirty high. So anyway, just understand the dynamic of these like emotions and these weird toxic habits that a lot of people may have. And you have to understand that you can choose to overcome them and be better. And I think a good book to read so you can just completely overcome all this crap and dodge any kind of complicated bullshit altogether. I think the book Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maslow Maltz or Maxwell Maltz or whatever, Maltz Maxwell, Psycho-Cybernetics will give you a really awesome understanding of how emotions work and how like thoughts work and your self-esteem and how you see yourself. And I highly recommend just read that book no matter what, because after working with psychologists and counselors and all sorts of shit for over 10 years, I found like it's what you identify with that literally controls all this crap. And if you're talking to a counselor or psychologist and they're allowing your identity to stay the same and they're just operating from your current paradigm of who you are and of life, if they're not actively trying to help you transform beyond your current identity, your current paradigm, then you're not going to be helped. They're going to help you feel a little bit better for a couple days, and you're going to go right back to being who you were before. It's unfortunate, man, but like the majority of these professionals themselves have extreme mental issues, or life issues. Like, it's funny, like we go to these like psychiatrists or psychologists or whatever, trying to fix our lives, but their health is in shambles. They're like overweight, they're obese or whatever. They have chronic anxiety or they're on pills or whatever. They can't fucking help you because they can't even help themselves. It's not a good thing. It's just interesting, I guess, right? Like, what the hell? It's a fact. I'm sorry. And so unfortunately, you're just gonna have to learn, by reading books and studying lectures about psychology like I did. Most people don't want to do that. So maybe try to find a professional through trial and error that is trying to help you with your paradigm, with your thoughts, with the way you see other people and the way you see the world. Your mental health will never change otherwise. Your life is never going to change until your paradigm of how things are, of how the world works, changes. That's just the way it is. If somebody is having mental mental issues, emotional issues, life issues, it's their paradigm and identity. What you identify with is what you're going to get in life. So, as I mentioned earlier, had all these people and doctors and stuff telling me I had this severe mental illness that was genetic and I was going to be in and out of mental hospitals my whole life. And it's like, I live by myself. I was in a relationship for over 4 years and lived with her. I have my own like careers and jobs and literally work with other people to like transform their health. And it's a personal training. It's a sales job. I literally make my own sales all the time. Have all these friends. Have had this shit going on for over like a decade, and it's like the psychiatrist that said that to my mother, that I'd never be able to get out of a mental hospital my whole life and live on my own. He was actually deemed the greatest psychiatrist in the United States, actually, and has written the textbook on mental illness in children. So to me, that was a blaringly obvious example of these people, man. The whole like this, the only thing that I can agree with about the system holding you down is that they're selling you lies. And it's like, if you choose to believe in the lies that society and that these systems and stuff sell you, and consumerism, and that you need to be on pills and happiness is not possible, you will literally never achieve the thing. Like, that's just the way that your life is going to turn out. But instead, if you do not accept the things that these people say, within reason, because some people do have like literal genetic issues where medication is very important. And by the way, I'm not against meds. I think if you actually are suicidal or you really do have that kind of issue, you'd be better off taking them, right? Suicide is not good. So take pills if you feel suicidal, or do whatever. Go see a real freaking psychologist, whatever. What was I saying? What I choose to identify with. I chose not to identify with the mentally ill, genetically broken person that these doctors told me I was. And look at me. My life is actually really awesome. Like, completely the opposite of what these people said. In fact, like, it's funny because my mother used to always tell me when I was younger, like, oh, you have the same genetic mental illness that your dad did, and, oh my God, whatever. Used to really believe I was mentally ill. But now that my whole life has changed and I'm doing so great now, my mom actually tells me, Wolfgang, you're actually doing better mentally and in life and socially, better than like 95% of the population. To me, that just like was hard to believe my mom said that, because just remembering when I was a kid and I was still stuck in these emotional issues and stuff. I remember she always was like, we had so many problems, always fighting, and she really thought I was like the mentally ill person that these doctors said I was. But now it's like just out of nowhere. My mom always tells me how great I'm doing, how much better I'm doing than the average person in society that she believes is healthy or normal or whatever. So, and this is actually the hardest thing for me in life now, is just seeing that the lies that people believe about themselves, the lies that people believe about their health, it almost brings tears to my eyes. It almost makes me want to cry. I feel like it's hard. I feel like everyone in life, in this society, is living a lie that they believe. And I'm the only one that was able to like escape the matrix, to recognize the truth, that most people are full of shit. So anyway, this video went completely off the rails, but whatever. I think this is probably the most beneficial video I've ever made. So hopefully this helped y'all. Hopefully the YouTube algorithm actually picks it up. I really hope so, because I know this would help a lot of people to really listen to. Have a great, amazing week and day. I've got to drink some freaking protein coffee and start training my clients. Have a great day, y'all.